In New York City, 1881, a man eludes another in the crowded streets. He appears anxious and eventually enters a building. Inside, he pays extra to send a telegram express. A young man receives the telegram. His uncle is urging him to hurry and save him. The young man travels to the uncle's large estate where a lawyer explains the uncle, John Carter, died suddenly and left everything to the young man. He passes the young man, Edgar Rice Burroughs, an old diary. After the lawyer leaves, the young man begins to read. The story begins in Arizona after the Civil War. John Carter, a decorated former captain in the Confederate Army, is prospecting for gold. The locals don't seem to like him. Colonel Powell of the cavalry tries to press Carter into service to fight the Apache. Carter refuses to cooperate, and after several failed escape attempts, he tricks a cell guard, knocks him out, and escapes Fort Grant on Colonel Powell's horse. Powell and the rest of the cavalry give chase but are forced to halt when they see that Carter has met up with a mounted Apache warband. Both sides are armed and wary, and a language barrier increases the tension. Soon a gunfight breaks out. Carter takes the chance to run off, but Colonel Powell is shot, and Carter returns to retrieve the injured man. The two escape into a box canyon and find a small cave. The Apache approach but quickly withdraws when they see something on the rock above the cave. Confused, Carter returns to where the Apache stood and notices the spider symbol on the rock face. Leaving Powell near the opening, he goes deeper into the cave to investigate. There Carter finds a chamber with strange markings, the walls and roof lined with gold. Entranced, he misses the stranger who appears behind him, and Powell is almost too late to shout a warning. The stranger is a bald man in a shining robe with a knife that seems to have manifested out of thin air. The two fight. Carter manages to shoot the bald stranger and notices that he has retrieved a blue glowing medallion. Picking it up, Carter repeats the words he heard the other say, and suddenly he awakes in a strange desert. Carter tries to walk but stumbles and appears to float. He spends several minutes learning to walk in this strange new environment. He makes his way to the nearby hill and finds a nest of eggs hatching green six-limbed infants. Disturbed, he is about to leave when he notices a group of green creatures approaching. They are mounted on large beasts and armed with firearms, and when they see Carter they open fire until one of them tells the others to stop. This tall green alien with 4 arms lays down his sword and rifle and greets Carter. As with the Apaches, there's a language barrier but the two manage to give their names. The green man is Tarkas, the Jedic, our leader of his tribe. Tarkas knows Carter is not a local, and asks him to jump again. Carter takes the chance to jump towards Tarkas's weapons, but before he can fight he is overpowered. They take Carter to their home in the ruins of an ancient city. By this time Carter is horrified and out of his depth. He wants to go home and knows the medallion is likely the only way. Unfortunately, Tarkas has recovered the medallion and wears it. In the city, other tharks treat Carter roughly. They do not recognize what type of being he is, and his lack of language comprehension labels him something akin to an animal or baby in their eyes. Thus, he is thrown in with the babies. Carter is given to Sola, a female. She pours a liquid into his mouth. Afterward, he is able to speak and understand the local language. Somewhere further away, a battle between humanoids is happening. They fight on airships, one side blue and the other side red. On a red ship, 3 bald figures appear and approach General Sab Ban. They give him a blue mesh device that gives him the ability to shoot bolts of energy, but when he tries to shoot the 3 figures he is instead blasted backwards. The 3 figures laugh. They are Therns, representatives of the goddess, and she has chosen to side with Prince Sab Ban of Zodanga in this conflict. In the royal palace of Helium, Deja Thoris is practicing a speech. Her father Tardos Morse, the Jedic of Helium, arrives arguing with an entourage. Deja demonstrates a machine that generates a weak blue ray, something she calls the 9th ray, which she claims is the source of their enemy Zodanga's new power. Tardos understands that this power could help level the battlefield, but they have no time to further their research into this mysterious blue ray. He dismisses the group and tells Deja she has to marry Sab Ban to end the conflict. Deja is devastated. She knows that the wedding is unlikely to stop Zodangan expansion, and that once married she would no longer be able to continue her research. Back in Tharkville, Carter now has a guardian, Woola, a dog, no matter how high or how far he jumps. Carter is disgruntled, as he is trying to find Tarkas to retrieve the medallion, but Woola is able to catch up with him and make enough noise to thwart Carter's plans. Carter ends up jumping into a Thark party, and Woola bursts in and loudly disrupts the gathering. The angry Tharks beat Woola and his owner, Sola. Enraged, Carter jumps in to stop the beating, unintentionally killing a Thark as a result and proving his ability to jump long distances. The Tharks see Carter as a new weapon but are angry at Sola for allowing him to escape. The next day they brand her for her error in front of Carter, who watches in horror as the Tharks warn her that her next offense will lead to death because she has transgressed so many times that she has no room on her skin for more brands. The Tharks take cover when a sentry warns of flying craft. 3 flying battleships appear in the sky, 2 red-flagged, Zodanga, one's chasing a blue-flagged, Helium, 1. They close in for boarding parties and hand-to-hand combat. Tarkas watches with a telescope and explains the war to Carter. On the ship Deja Thoris attempts to escape, then falls and hangs on several hundred feet up. Carter sees she is human and jumps to her rescue. With his ability to jump long distances, he manages to rescue the girl and starts to defend her, only for her to prove her own fighting ability. Still, Carter is able to turn the tide of the battle, but the blue Helium craft crashes. After this spectacle, Tarkas makes Carter his Dotar Sojat, or right arms, and gives him Deja Thoris as a prize. Carter is reminded of Powell and refuses the position, but Tarkas says that if Carter rejects the offer, Tarkas would be unable to spare Deja's life. Carter reluctantly agrees, and soon finds himself fending off everyone's inquiries about his ability. Deja wants to learn how to jump as Carter can, but figures that the ability is likely related to Carter's different bone density and thus it would not be a skill she or anyone else could learn. Tarkas knows that she is trying to gain a new weapon for Helium and warns Carter against her. Carter just wants to go home. He tries describing his home to Deja, but she thinks him either insane or a liar because he describes an environment that hasn't existed here for thousands of years. Seeing his seriousness, she guesses he is a Thurn, leading them to a discussion of astronomy and finally the realization that Carter is from Earth, which she calls Jasum, but he is currently on Mars, which she calls Barsoom. Carter and Deja Thoris enter a cave that is supposed to be a temple of the goddess and her followers, the Therns. Deja reads some ancient markings, but before they can proceed, the 3 are arrested by the Tharks for going into the temple. Tarkas helps them all escape, at great personal risk, and Carter guesses Sola as his daughter. Sola, Carter, and Deja Thoris journey to the River Is to solve the temple mystery, taking the medallion. Along the way, Sola warns Carter that Deja Thoris is leading them astray. Confronted, she admits they were headed for Helium, and a furious Carter makes to abandon her as he realizes she may have been manipulating him to turn him into her new weapon. He ignores Deja's pleas until she finally admits she did have a personal interest in the battle, for she is the Helium princess, likely to be married off to the Zodangan prince and potentially killed. The river is a path for pilgrims. Those who have sinned or have lived too long follow the river to end their lives and find paradise. Sola, seeing what seem to be Tharks sailing away in bodies on the ground, almost joins them until Carter stops her. Carter and Deja Thoris enter and glowing blue graphics show the solar system. Deja Thoris realizes the blue light is not supernatural but generated by machines. It's the 9th ray, the same blue ray she had been researching and that the enemy had been using as a weapon. They also realize that Carter's appearance on Mars is likely due to transmission of a copy of himself from Earth to Mars. Outside, an army of Tharks approach, advised by Matai Shang. He is curious about the stranger who is getting involved with the wars, and intends to test his ability. Carter and the 2 women mount up and scramble. As the hordes approach, Carter tells the others to flee, over Deja Thoris's objections. He stays back to fight the rampaging army with only Woola to help him. Killing many, he is reminded of the devastation of war, and finding his dead wife and child in a burned farmhouse. Carter is eventually overcome, just as a Helium battlecruiser arrives overhead to end the fight. Tardos, Morse and Sab then disembark. Sab then offers his sword to Deja Thoris as a sign of trust and asks her to marry him. Deja Thoris almost kills him anyway, but stops herself and instead makes them take the wounded Carter to Zodanga to be healed. Carter awakes in a guarded room. At first he thinks he is in Helium, but the red-clothed guards laugh. As he muses on being in enemy territory, a man dressed in blue appears and tells him he is in Zodanga. He whispers to Carter to take him hostage, but Carter is too confused, and an exasperated Kantos pretends to be held hostage as he leads Carter away from the guards. The 2 jump to a nearby tower. Inside, Deja Thoris is dressed in wedding finery. After thanking Kantos for bringing Carter to her, she dismisses everyone in the room. Again, she asks Carter to fight on her side. He refuses again, and finally she sees the wedding ring on his finger. Understanding that his heart belonged to another, but now knowing that the other woman is dead, Deja Thoris tells him the magic words that will transport him back to Earth. Outside, Zodangan guards demand entry, but when the door opens, Carter has vanished. We see Carter as in a ceiling recess. He exits, and she uses a blue ray to immobilize him, then transforms into Matai Shang, the Thurn leader. He forces Carter to come with him caught in a wedding procession traffic jam, and leads Carter outside. Suddenly Woola arrives in a flurry, manages to disable Shang's restraint, and Carter escapes on the light flyer. After a hair-raising chase, he crash lands close to Sola. Carter and Sola arrive safely, but the Tharks throw Carter to a large coliseum and made to fight first one then a pair of giant white apes. Sola causes a distraction in the stands, which allows Carter to kill first one then the other beast. As the Tharks cheer for him, he challenges Tal Hages for the role of Jedic. Carter beheads him with one neat stroke. Now the Jedic of the Tharks, he has an army willing to fight for him. He leads them back to Zodanga to stop the wedding. Carter points to the airships but the Tharks refuse, so he takes off by himself in a light flyer. As the wedding ceremony is about to finish, Carter crashes in. Deja Thoris is thrilled to see him but it is too late as the signal had been cast. Zodangans begin attacking the Heliumites, and once again Matai Shang and his blue rays seem unstoppable. During the fight, Sab then is killed by the blue device he so dearly loved. Carter takes his wedding ring and asks Deja to marry him. As he returns to the bedchamber, the guard thanks him and reaching out, grabs him and shifts into Matai Shang, to send Carter back to the cave in Arizona. Carter wakens stiff, dusty and bearded. Carter's narrative continues, as he realizes there must be other Tharns on Earth, and spends the next 10 years looking for another medallion. He prepares a crypt on his estate so he can return to Mars and leave his body safe on Earth. Nephew Edgar runs to check the crypt. Tharn appears behind Edgar, and is about to kill him, but is shot dead. Edgar turns around to see Carter outside holding a gun. Taking the medallion from the dead Tharn, Carter goes into the crypt, lies down and recites the phrase to return to. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to watch more videos like this.